Afternoon, everyone. Joining live on Radio Sofia, the platform for social, economic, and political debates and discussions. And I'm your host, Himadri Chakraborty, for the day. Today is the 5th of June, which happens to be the World Environment Day. And we decided to focus our energies on the environment of politics. That environment which is decided by the ink on the index finger. That index finger which decides the kissa of the kursi, and that kursi which any political party in India doesn't want to exit. To talk on that and much more, we have with us the master of the exit polls with a strike rate of close to 95% in elections. We have Mr. Pradeep Gupta, renowned psephologist and chairman and managing director, Axis My India. As part of today's session, he'll talk us through his recently published book, How India Votes and What It Means. Please feel free to type in your questions, which shall be taken at the end or maybe based on the context of the existing conversation. So on behalf of Radio Sofia, we thank you, Mr. Pradeep Gupta, to spare your valuable time and discuss on your book.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah. To set the ball rolling, Mr. Gupta, I'd like to kind of ask you, what really brought you in this profession of being a psephologist? I mean, I have two parts to this question. First is, of course, your personal motivation, and also the fact that this is a risky business in the sense that, I mean, maybe just after elections, the sanctity of these exit poll results really do not hold true for long. So in a sense, when these exit poll results do not hold true for long, why do you think exit polls actually matter to a diverse nation like India, where many of whom, including politicians, often question the exit poll results? So your thoughts on that?
So first, I would start with how I'm there in this exit poll or political poll prediction business. This is there in my DNA, I would say. My father was a freedom fighter, writer, poet. So he got me into media business of per se with a clear-cut vision that, you know, one day we will have our own media house. And in fact, he was doing local level political advisory, you know. So that's how my upbringing is, you know, the interest in politics, elections, forecasting, advising to the various political parties and to the leaders. So that is always there, you know, since my childhood. And particularly as far as number crunching goes, I used to come after appearing in exams, and I used to write my scorecards in a calendar. There is always a space for, you know, doodh ka hisab, you know. So today, if I have appeared for chemistry, then I used to come and write how many marks I'm likely to get for this. And when result used to come, I used to take the mark sheet and that paper to my father, and I used to show how identical it is matching. So yeah, number is there. I mean, that's my passion, you can say. And politics, election, forecasting is there in my DNA. So this is how I got into this business per se. Now coming to why there is exit poll, what does it mean? Exit poll to the world or to the audience or to the viewers is just the number with, I would say, prediction before the result, maybe 2-3 days before the final result, and post election polling, the vote is cast. It's not about just the exit poll. It's about how and why people have voted to a particular party and particular leader. It is this kind of insight is there. Human behavior is there. If we have made certain choices, what is there behind they are making a preferring a particular political party, this why is a $1 million question for politicians, for government, for people at large. That's very important. Why and how they voted to a particular party. And in fact, they keeps a very close eye, large section of society of people who have voted, they keep a very close eye to the elected government, or for that matter, elected leaders. And kind of at the end of 5 years, they themselves make the report card, what they have expected, what these leaders has promised, and what is delivered. This is all there in this exit poll.
Mr. Gupta, I mean, you talked about number crunching, and I read that Access My India, your organization, is actually recognized now by the Harvard Business School, as well as they've actually prepared a case study based on your election forecasting techniques. So, I mean, for the benefit of our audience, who are largely PhD scholars, I'd like to kind of ask you to throw some light on the sampling technique that you adopt and the forecasting techniques that make you so accurate in your predictions. Because I also read that yours is probably the only organization which tries to cover every constituency, be it legislative or parliament, for your exit poll. So, I mean, how do you design the sampling strategy? What kind of questions do you really put forward to the electorate? And then how do you kind of go about estimating the entire results?
So I'll try and take you to the entire journey. Journey start right from recruitment, the right interviewer for that matter, who actually go and do the face-to-face interviews, during these elections, even before and after. So first thing is the recruitment. The second is the selection of right candidate. The third is the training. The kind of training is required to conduct political interview, which is sensitive in nature, which can lead to the biased also in anybody's mind. So the training is most important. Then there is a monitoring. The country is too big or too large a country. We need to monitor whatever is being asked to do, they are following or not following. Then the most important thing is the sampling, whom to ask, whom to interview. So this is the sampling part of it. Of course, it has to be representative across the demography and geography. So this is the sampling. The next is the once data coming in, then there is a quality control method and system where the collected data is being collected as per the sampling or no. Is there any deficiency in that, or everything is right? And based on this raw data, what you call it, the important part is the analysis, data analysis. And data analysis has 3-4 major portion to it. First is to weight it to the actual numbers vis-a-vis the collected number. When I say actual number, for example, if there are 3 unique demography, which is your gender, age, and geography, meaning rural and urban, whether educate numbers is collected in tune to these 3 unique geography. And in context of Indian election, there is another factor, which is the caste factor. In each constituency, there is a caste ratio or equation. We need to maintain that. So all these 4 elements, once the raw data start coming in, we have to see, our quality control department has to see whether which is adequate, or is there any deficiency, or what is the corrective action to be taken at the field level or at the analysis level. And basis of all this, we do the forecasting. So this is our process and system, and probably for this region, Harvard Business School, now the Access My India is a kind of curriculum at the Harvard Business School,
Right, right. No, I mean, I'm also curious to know because you cover a large part of the exit polls, which I understand happens on the day of elections. So obviously, you will, I mean, your team will not kind of go and ask people whom did you vote for directly. So how do you kind of design the question very,
Yeah.
I mean, cleverly, especially on the day of elections? Because when you have very limited amount of time at your disposal.
So there are two or three different types of aspect to this. One, it's not always the same election day. If the election is in multiple phases, for example, in Bengal, it was in
8
8 phases,
phases.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we never conduct the interview from 1 to 7 phase the same day because we have ample time. So next day we go to their home and, kind of when people are relaxed, comfortable, so we can interact with them. So it's always post election when there is a multiple phase election, and for the 8th phase we have no choice but to do the validation on the same day, though we have done our homework prior to the election, but we need to see whether whatever we have done in the past, it is in the same line, the final voting pattern is in the same line. So, and because we are not allowed to do the interview or conduct the interview these days at the polling sites. So without any tablet, a pen, a paper, we need to just see the kind of, we are trying and gauging the when, who is going to elect the leader and the government. The second is the leaders. People are voting for them. And the third is the most important one is the performance of incumbent government whom they have voted 5 years back. So what they have promised and what they have delivered, they have very good understanding of this fact. So these are the three elements. All the elections evolve and revolve around this fact. Now coming to how elections has changed during, let's say 5 to 10 years time, this is what you have asked for. The most important part is the accountability. Even in the past, there was the accountability, but it was difficult to get the how much is delivered and how much is not delivered, right? This was very difficult. Whatever they could see is in surrounding their areas, which is very limited in their villages or town or wards or kasbah. But because of technology and particularly internet and smartphone, see, ultimately, when they go to vote, what they are doing is taking a decision whom to vote. And if decision is also for 5 years and 80% vote cast, I'm not talking about who those who are not turned out for the vote. In general election, the voter turnout was 67%, meaning 33% has not turned out to vote. So I'm talking about 67%, those who has cast the vote. 80% of this 67% is belong to rural and poor. So, and their livelihood largely depend on the government. So they are very careful while electing the next government. So because of technology, they are able to make the consensus while making a important decision, even in at our household and in any forum for that matter. You try and talk to people, you try and talk to your peers, your friends, your family, your neighbor. Because of technology, they are able to talk, and people across the state, if it is an assembly election, across the country, if it is a general election, they are able to talk, and most importantly, talk almost free of cost. That is the big important point, and they make the consensus, and the result of this, you must have seen 90% time in last 20 years, you see the mandate is in one direction, meaning decisive government, no mili-juli sarkar like earlier days, like during 90s. And after 2000, you must have seen 90% time, the proper mandate, no hung assembly kind of a mandate. So this is one change, is the sense of that accountability and they demand accountability. Leader or political party or government for that matter has to deliver. There is no doubt on this. Those days are over. You go and show your face once in a 5 year. That was the complaint. Ki 5 saal mein ek baar aate ho. If that is the case today, they will be thrown out of the scene the next election. So this is the one big change, I would say. Now coming to the political side of it, the ideological change, I don't think there is any much difference in that. Of course, it evolved and improvised over a period of time from the political party's point of view. More or less, they are having similar or same ideology, except the new emerging parties. They have their own and different ideology. So that's the, I would say, the basic change in this thing.
Mr. Pradeep, you talked about, let me kind of extract two words from what you spoke. First is this importance on accountability and delivery that you talked about. And the fact that you also talked about the large mandate that these parties are, the winning party is getting in the last few years. So my first question is in terms of the large mandate that parties are getting, more in terms of the landslide victories. From the point of view of a pollster, what is more difficult to gauge? Is it a landslide victory or is it a neck-to-neck victory? And the reason I ask you is, in landslide victories, there's there's a lot of homogeneity in choices, which might actually disturb your sample design, and there might be greater chances of sampling error. And similarly, neck-to-neck victories are obviously difficult to predict. So from a pollster's point of view, which one, according to you, is kind of difficult to gauge and why?
Of course, where there is a tight fight, like case of Haryana, which is like in the recent past, that's the only example when the final result was hang assembly, which was most difficult to predict, because the margin between two parties is very less, very difficult to make out, who will, with a limited sample size. If margin is huge, then you have elbow room to play around. But if a margin is narrow, then it is very difficult. It's like nightmare kind of situation.
Actually, this is a slight contradiction to the findings of Mr. Prannoy Roy, as part of his book, The Verdict, where he actually mentions that pollsters have found it difficult to gauge a landslide victory because of the homogeneity of choices. So my question was on that line, but it's good to know that actually the neck-to-neck victories are more difficult to gauge. Now, coming to the delivery part, you make a very startling revelation as part of your book that communalization and hate speeches in electoral rallies do not quite matter in determining electoral outcomes. And what matters is, of course, delivery is what you've already mentioned. But again, you also mentioned that GDP growth has almost no impact on election outcomes. So I found it a bit contradictory in these two notions as to what do you exactly mean by delivery? Do you mean the basic services of roti kapra makan? Or, are you looking at the qualitative aspect of delivery or the quantitative aspect? That's my first question. And also attached to that is, there are a lot of studies as part of public policy and economics, the fact that inflation plays a key role in elections. When there's a price rise, generally the incumbent tends to suffer. So how does the voter kind of perceive the price rise as well as these delivery outcomes that I just now referred to?
So you asked, in fact, 3-4 questions together. I'll try and answer one by one. So now coming first, the delivery, it's very simple. It's like if you are a lecturer or a professor, your job is to deliver the lecture or the knowledge for that matter, right, to the students. Like anything in life has some purpose or the other. So when it comes to the leader, for example, this is the pen. I have bought this pen to write, right? Isn't it? If this don't write, I will throw it out. You will throw it out, right? There is not a single % doubt on this. or you will replace it. The better dignified word is to replace it rather than using to throw it out. In reality, you are throwing it out. You are annoyed with this. It's not writing, right? So same goes with the leader. What they do? They are responsible to function and run the government. What's the government role? There are so many ministries. What are they meant for? To delivery. So when it comes to different election, if it is a general election or you are electing a national government, you know, what's their role? Their role is to make the policies for people at large. Most important part, as you rightly mentioned, is the inflation and employment. These are the two basic things which goes to the account of central government, you know. Then most important thing in our country is the PDS, public distribution system. Large section of society depend on the rationing thing, you know. Then farmer, we call it, our country is, you know, बोलते हैं ना कृषि प्रधान देश है. 80% of population directly or indirectly depend on agriculture. So there are issues like fertilizer, availability of electricity and water for irrigation. Then most important is minimum support price. All these matters comes under purview of central government. When it comes to state government is responsible, largely responsible for 5-6 basic things, which is road, electricity, water, health, meaning hospitals, and health related, medical related support system, then education, law and order. And of course, PDS system when it comes to the actual execution and delivery through ration shops. So state government is responsible for this. So any state government has to make sure all these things are, all these basic fundamental needs are met. So they have to deliver. There is no doubt, single % doubt on this. And because their livelihood, the people's 80% people's livelihood depend on this, right? So they have to, there is no choice on that. The second question you ask is the communalization, you know, hate speeches, rally, this, that. First of all, let me tell you, my book is all about how India votes, meaning how democracy function in India. My book is not all about what leaders are saying, what strategy they are adopting to contest or fight the election. You know, there are different things. My thing is how India votes. They can say anything. For example, since this thing forum is, you know, IIM is a management student and a scholar you are, the most important thing is the packaging. When you need to communicate, you need to reach out to the people. Most important part is the packaging, how you package yourself and try and address needs or issues of all section of society. There are different people have different needs. You know, based on needs, they make their choices, decision making. So they try and communicate. For example, now I'm giving you any corporate advertising example, any product for that matter, generally it is, you know, by a celebrity, a big star, or a sports star, or anybody. And the product is different. So here when I say delivery is the product, what you're referring, what they say in speech in the process of reaching out to different sections of society is the communication. So they make communication as per their understanding, what they feel good. But the people at large, they make choices based on deliveries. You say whatever you want to say. Now coming to the rallies have 3 basic F. Fun, fair, fund. You know, fun, fair, fund. This 80% I refer to poor and rural, they hardly has any this kind of avenue during their life where they have been sent to a picnic. They've been sent in a good bus, good social gathering. Then money is also given, 500 rupees mostly per rally. They have been taken care of their morning breakfast to lunch to evening and when they come back. So for them, it's fun, fair, fun. The final voters and the decision making is based on the performance of incumbent government. If they are not happy, they will replace. If they are happy, they will retain. It's as simple as that. So this is the rally and the communication they use for their own political purpose. Now coming to the GDP, which is important for I am Kolkata students, I would say. The GDP, what is GDP? GDP is gross domestic production. What contributes to the GDP? Services more than 50%, agriculture 15%, about manufacturing about 20%, and some other things. What does it mean? And when you say your country construct is 80% people are depend directly or indirectly with agriculture or farming fraternity, then your GDP, if it is good, when you say GDP is good, growing, then comparing to the last year, what you are referring to? You are referring to the stock market sentiments are very good. The employment in urban area or metro cities is good. People are getting good increments, promotion, but that is not even 5%. These metros, it contributes only 5%, not even 20%. Forget the 80%. So for interest of your listeners, what is most important is to understand Indian construct for that matter, 70% population rural, 30% urban. Rural everybody knows, but what is the definition of urban? Generally people misunderstand urban by sometime with 8 or 10 metros, sometime with top 25 cities, sometime top major 100 cities. No, it is 6,000 urban cities and towns. The definition is very simple, where the administrative body is Nagar Palika and corporation. Nagar Nigam is classified under urban, and they represent 30% of Indian population, and 70% is actually rural. So when you see the GDP, if it is growing, what does it mean? Generally, when GDP health is good, growing, generally the inflation is more, isn't it? GDP growth meaning more demand, right? More demand. When the more demand is there, definitely prices are going to go up. And if prices are going to up, which is the major factor in electing this government, particularly central government, right? So that is the most important thing. One is the only 15% representation of 80% vote cast in your GDP. Second, when GDP is good, then inflation is good. When inflation is good, the common man suffers. The businessmen or business fraternity enjoy it. You know, it may have a spiral effect, but these spiral effect may be 5 years down the line. Once your tax collection get affected and the social security measures and the budget allocation for the social security measures gets hit, but that is 5 years down the line. The immediate impact is inflation is high. And as far as employment goes, which is only in 5% cities, that's it. So GDP, I'll give you the example of that. 2004, 1999 to 2004, there was a 5-year Atal Bihari government. They say India signing GDP growth was in the excess of 10%, right? What is the result? BJP could secure only 115 seats out of 543 seats. Lost very badly, isn't it? Now, 2009. 5 years government of Manmohan Sarkar, UPA government. Globally, there was a slowdown in 2008. GDP was suffering. What is the result? Manmohan repeated the government, right? 2014. GDP was good. I'm not saying the bad. It was good. What is the result? Manmohan Sarkar lost very badly. In 2019, GDP was in bad shape. Everybody was saying unemployment, GDP, economy suffering, this, that. What is the result? They came not only victorious, but with a bigger margin, right? This is the national election. Now coming to the assembly election of 2004, same. Chandrababu Naidu, technology, he lost so badly that he could not come back for 10 years. So these are the evident example in front of you. We cannot ignore that. Only thing we need to understand how people vote. Indian construct is important. Indian democracy, how it function is important. We are not discussing how economy is functioning. That's the difference.
Right. I mean, as you mentioned, it's very important to understand how people vote. In this context, Ajit has a question. Ajit is one of our doctoral scholars who asks, what makes the Dravidian belt difficult to predict compared to the northern part of India? I mean, I think in your book, you mention about the fact that you were unable to kind of decipher the minds of the women voter, especially in the southern fringes of India, in Tamil Nadu especially. So I'll kind of contextualize this question with also the aspect of the increasing importance of a woman voter and the fact that do you think the increasing amount of women-centric policies that many of the governments resort to, as well as the empowered woman in terms of making independent choices, is kind of contributing to the increasing importance of the women voter?
So you have two questions. One is Tamil Nadu, whether it is difficult to predict. I would say it is not so difficult to predict, particularly Tamil Nadu in comparison to other states of India. The reason is very simple. Tamil Nadu is one state where the decisive factor is not the caste, but the gender, which is when it comes to gender, there is only two slices of it, male, female. But when it comes to caste, there are multiple, at least 5 for sure. So Tamil Nadu is very easier. Why we got failed in 2016, that was our beginning. And we had faced some problem of getting the right, surveyors at that point of time. And we have to have, the surveyors who speaks not only the Tamil language, but their dialect also. So that time we have our own resource limitations. So that is the reason why we could not call that time election right. But after that, in 2019, we were bang on. We predicted 37 seats out of 38 because one Vellore seat was that time election was postponed, and also the Pondicherry seat. So bang on, we were bang on. And even this assembly election, we call it absolutely, in the correct the outcome. So that's not a problem at all. Now coming to the woman voter, yes, women now see the construct again. 50%. 50% is a too big a size, right? People generally, any caste for that matter, generally 15% one caste, meaning it's a big number. 15%, 20% is a big number. Now 15% is too big a number. Now coming to why they are important, then again it's a decision-making process. And when we say woman is important, generally, again, decision making is depend on their financial independence. If you are financially independent, even in being a male member in your family, you have say in the decision making process, right? You can make your own choices. So it's all about that. So they try and empower these women. And particularly after Narendra Modi Sarkar, though Indira Awas Yojana was there since ages, what this government is doing is, Indira Awas Yojana, they are giving financial support to make your house. They make it mandatory, it will be on the name of only female, a woman. So if woman gets home in their name, the kind of pleasure they get, you cannot imagine, right? But of course, it started the attracting women from J. Lalita. She used to give right from pressure cooker to bindi to sari to refrigerator to television set, everything. to women. And that's the reason why probably in Tamil Nadu, over the years, gender matters a lot when it comes to the final outcome. So women being 50%, and particularly in India, the except southern state, all three regions, the north, the west, and the east, generally women are dependent on male, right? So they try and empower the women so they can make their own choices, and whoever is empowering them, definitely their vote generally tends to, go in their way, whether it's Mamata Banerjee or whether it's Modi in general election, or anybody for that matter.
Mr. Pradeep, the other kind of voter that, you must have come across various kind of elections, and especially in the West Bengal elections, you must have come across the silent voter that you often talked about in various television debates. But it's generally the trend that the silent voter votes against the ruling party or the incumbent. Why do you think that theory has been kind of put to rest, especially in the West Bengal elections?
So who is silent voter? We need to understand, and what is the numbers as far as silent voter goes is, over the years of our study suggests that there are silent voter, but to the extent of 2 to 5%, maximum 5%, which is the very rare phenomenon. And 2% is always there, as you are rightly saying. It's not about the ruling party or this, it's the aggressive party. They are silent against them. They don't want to speak. They get fear, If they speak, they may be beaten. They may be taken to the task later on. So this is that silent voter. So it's not necessarily it's ruling party or the challenger or the incumbent government. What is more important in Bengal this time, because Bengal has a tradition or whatever the history of political violence, but this violence was always limited or restricted to two-party workers or cadre, mostly. Generally, the common man was never affected or impacted with this political violence. But what had happened this time, you must have seen, right from Chief Minister herself, right? She got injury in her leg, to Union Minister, to BJP National President, JP Nadda was attacked. And most importantly, 4 common man, a voter, died through CRPF firing, right? This led to real good amount of fear factor among the people at large, which was about 20%. I have mentioned in my exit poll presentation, and Rahul Kamal has, questioned me like anything. Pradeep, if you are saying 20%, 10 people you have talked to, 5% you are sure about, out of 10, 5 persons you are sure about, they have told you the right thing. 3 are reluctant, but somehow you managed to talk to them. And 2, you could not spoke to, meaning 20% is a good sizable number. Your poll can go, any victory or lose margin generally is between 3 to 7, 8% at max. But 20% people you could not talk to only. Where this is going, even I said, I don't know where it is going, and that's the reason why I'm not able to call a clear-cut winner at this juncture. During exit poll, I said this. So this is the probably reason why, because of the kind of fear factor this time and the kind of violence took place, it's not that ruling party or otherwise, people were not ready to speak to.
Yeah, Mr. Pradeep, we are gradually coming to the end of the session. Before I kind of open the forum for the rest of the students as well, there's another interesting point in your book where you kind of claim that the leaders are much more fallible in the social media era, especially as many of their allegations have, their attributions do not claim any source. So, and you refer to the various slander campaigns of various political leaders calling by different names, etc. But the larger point I wanted to understand from you, from your experience of covering the exit polls, how do you see the negative publicity about the incumbent or the opponent affect the mind of the voter? Do you think that adds to what is, popularly known as incumbency bonus in political science? So, do you think that there's a kind of benefit that people get or the political parties get out of this negative publicity?
So since you are asking question about publicity and advertising, be it negative or positive, so you simply take this way. The first answer is only effect to the 5 to 10% at max. That is clear. And why? I'll tell you why. Generally, even in corporate world, the product which is not selling, generally you will see and witness more advertising for that. Right? Have you ever seen Tata Salt advertisement except 15th August and 26th January? That is just the tokenum desh ka number. Because the demand and supply is reversed. So again, I am telling you, it's all about your product, how much substance it has got. That nothing to do with the publicity. If you have substance and if you publicize it, it is likely to be sold. But if there is no substance and you do only advertising, which is the case generally, they say in a corporate language, they say the pull and push, tactics of advertising. So it's a push tactic. No matter how much you push, boss, ultimately I have to spend money, no? How can you push me beyond a point? So that point is only 5 to 10%.
Right. Before we kind of leave it to the audience to ask more questions, I'll actually ask a very pertinent question, especially for many of our research students, which Anuj Goel, one of our doctoral students in public policy, asked. He asked me privately as well, the fact that you have gathered so much data over the years with respect to these exit polls. Is it possible for, what is the way out from the perspective of Access My India, as well as from you, whether that data can be accessed by research scholars for further research? And how do we go about it?
It depends. It's very subjective question, and of course the answer is also subjective. It depends what is the objective of your research, to the kind of extent you want the access to my data is $1 million question. So yes, if somebody requests me and let down the purpose of it, objective of the why you need the data and the kind of extent of data you need or the information you need, I am sure we can provide that. Subject to it doesn't hamper the our data security system and personal privacy matter. So personal, I am sure you will never ask for this. You will only ask for the information. But depend on the extent of information you want, we can share that data. That's not a problem.
And do you share some of this information even to the political parties who actually go on to win the elections for better policy making and informed choices?
See, I'll tell you, ours is definitely not an NGO. Ours is definitely not a social company. Ours is a full-fledged business company. So we invest to collect this data and information, and we try and provide this through advisory. So even to anybody for that matter, there is a cost involved to this, and we share the data and information. No problem. That's our business.
Thank you, Mr. Pradeep. I think this has been one of the most fascinating conversations on Radio Sophia. And your book certainly is a treasure trove of some of the ground realities of the polls. Let me I'll ask people to raise their hand if they want to ask questions themselves. Apart from that, let me take some questions from the chat box. Okay, let me take the question of Shailendra first. Shailendra, if you can go ahead and ask the question.
Thanks, Mr. Pradeep, for the wonderful talk, and congratulations for getting it right most of the time. Am I audible, Himadri?
Yes, definitely. Yes. Go on, Shailendra, I am hearing you.
Yeah. So my question is, what purpose exit polls serve now, except of course the entertainment value that it gives for 3-4 days before the results formally come out? What is the larger purpose for conducting exit polls. I understand the value of the other polls that are made in run-up to the elections, like popularity of Prime Minister Modi, that is conducted every month or every week. But now that opinion polls are largely, have lost their utility because of the bans and all, what purpose exit polls per se serve? What is the larger purpose? Is it worth the money that is put in there?
So I'll tell you, first of all, you need to understand Access My India. Our company is objective or vision is to connect and resolve the problems of all 25 crore Indian households. That's our purpose. So it's not the exit poll numbers what you see on a television screen during exit poll period and before election result is one thing. What is most important thing, we are trying and studying the human behavior, how one take a decision and what kind of decision he or she takes in what kind of circumstances and what is important, what matters to them. So this is the study, like any business for that matter, or any governance for that matter, you have to understand the human psychology, their needs, So we are trying to understand their needs there, and based on those needs, they make their choices and decision making. So exit poll, of course, there is a number, but why and how these numbers are, how they are making a particular choice, that is $1 million question. And we have all these kind of information, which is very useful for corporate, for government, for political party, for leaders. So this is the purpose of exit poll, and what we say, it's a human being. For us, human being is a consumer for corporates. Same human being is citizen for government. And same human being is voter for a political party or a leader. So we need to understand the needs of that human being, and everything else evolve and revolve around this so-called needs. So that's the purpose. I hope I could answer your question.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, just one you may choose not to answer this, but so do corporates buy data from you?
Of course, yes. They conduct the research, and in fact, our large portion, I'm saying lion's share, comes from for corporate market research segment. Our product is called Consumer Trust Index, where we try and provide the information for different necessities, we call it, from hair oil to footwear. What if they are using or consume a particular hair oil? Why is that so? Why not others? So that's the study, which matters a lot for any corporate brands.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pradeep, for the answer. Anuj Goel, if you want to ask the question, go ahead.
Right. Yeah. Hello, Pradeep. I'm following you till 2016, and most of the time you are bang on. But my particular problem with not only with your polls, but with all polls, with Terence has also pointed out is that your analysis, when I talk in a political manner, that your analysis is not one on a single poll. So like once I have taken data for West Bengal after investing a lot of resources, and then I've done analysis and I told that this party is winning or that party is winning. But what I see in India as a student of political science, that we really don't have a temporal study where we are studying elections, say from 1990s or say early 2000, when opinion polls and exit polls have really started coming out. And when I compare it with say US or Canada or maybe say Britain, to an extent that they have the temporal data, and the temporal data can give you a lot of insights about changing aspirations, about what people are choosing, what they are wanting, and how these gaps are changing, how they are responding. Like one of the things which I can mention, that the phenomena called economic voting, which a lot of people have bugged in Canada or Europe, where people vote according to what is the condition of economy. But as in your research, and it came in my research also, that really the GDP is not important. But why that is taking place? Is it just because most of us are working in agriculture, but we should also encounter to the fact that the most of us who are working in agriculture, they don't want to work in agriculture. They are looking for, continuously looking for jobs in the service sector or manufacturing or urban jobs. So we really can't say that the GDP growth is not going to impact because most of them are dependent on agriculture. So why you don't collaborate with universities or research institutions where who can invest much more time because you are in corporate world, you don't have that much time. They can invest time and resources and can come out with really insight which can help in policy making, governance, and implementation of those policies. And also, also
Anuj, I
can
think if you can keep the question a little shorter and let him answer,
yeah.
because
So
we have
I
a lot
just
of
want to,
other
why
questions.
don't you collaborate with the research institutions, which I don't see in the case of India, which many poll agencies do in US or Europe.
So, if may I ask Himadri, what's the final question to me?
From what I understood, what he's asking is whether there is a scope of collaboration with various research institutes to have a more detailed analysis about the temporal effects of analysis of elections over the years. So I think this is where he wanted to.
Yes, the policy making bodies at government, both at central and state level, they definitely have, first of all, their own wings of research, and also sometimes they approach people like us to get the research conducted on their various aspect time and again. So yes, we always collaborate with them, but that collaboration can be, increase upon. That's what you are saying. Without information, see, it's very simple. For example, if government is designing a particular social welfare schemes, let's say, for example, that matter, Ujjwala gas connection, Ujjwala Yojana, until and unless they know how many households are using or not using the LPG cooking gas, how many of them are using wood as a fuel, how many of them are using kerosene as the fuel, they cannot make the policy. Similarly goes with the Jan Dhan Yojana. Before this government, the bank account holding pattern was very limited. In fact, 90% or 80% women or female didn't have the bank account. And once they open the bank account, see the difference, direct money transfer. That's the reason why the good amount of leakages could be controlled. Earlier, Rajiv Gandhi used to say, we send 100 rupees and only 18 reaches to the actual beneficiary. Now this 18 has increased to more than 60 to 70%, because they could control the leakages through various measures and systems, because they could able to identify those problems and gaps through conducting the research only. So it is always the whatever decision or policies are made out of certain research study data only. It cannot be made just like that.
Mr. Pradeep, with your due permission, with the amount of questions we've got, we'll if you can allow us to maybe have 3 more questions. So we have them on the chat box. One of them is being posted by Faizul, who asks, how do you gauge the impact of political consultancy firms like IPAC on the current political space in India? And do you think this model undermines the India's party system?
See, it's like having a professional approach. It's like what is their role? Their role is to play like a consultant, the external consultant. Generally, you also have in your company various consultants for different purposes. Sometimes the financial, sometimes the marketing, sometimes the HR consultant. Their role is to give you the independent advice, and if you follow them, I think you are able to, in political sense, you come victorious. Generally, you tend to have bias, you tend to have their own understanding. But as an external person or a expert, he can definitely guide you in a much better way.
Vipin asked you in the context of you mentioning that people are giving clear mandates in most elections in the recent times. So does that mean people are voting more for the party rather than on the merits of the individuals who contest the elections?
Actually, very good question. In fact, party and individuals, I would say both. Who's there at the helm of it is most important, the chief ministerial candidate, and in case of assembly elections, and in case of Lok Sabha election, it is the prime minister candidate. So they generally vote for the person, but the most important person, not necessarily the MLAs or MP candidates, but most important is chief minister and prime minister candidate.
Right. And the final question I'll take of Bipin Dubey, who asks in the context of the Bihar Assembly election results, I mean, he asks, why have the most of the pollsters got it wrong in predicting the Bihar Assembly election results and engaging the rural voters' experiences?
In fact, Bihar was the case, clear-cut example where both the party got same voting percentage, which is 37%. That's what I was referring to. Only thing is that BJP could get 125 seats where they came out victorious, but the vote share was both the party 37%, and that was the one election that Corona was at the peak, and yes, most of the pollsters got it wrong, which is fair, but the 37%, it's very difficult to gauge that, who will be getting more seats. The other Mahagathbandhan got 110 seats, vis-a-vis they got 125 seats. And women voter turnout was the key factor, because traditionally in Bihar, generally, history also suggests 5% more female votes than the male. The reason is very simple. Most of the population, the male population, is migrated from Bihar for their whatever profession. And this time, all of us thought people were back in the Bihar. And that was the reason why the Bihar election happened in 3 phases. The first phase, 2.5% more male voted. In second phase, 6.5% female more voted. And third phase, 11%. That 11% made all the difference, because women were voting more in favor of NDA, and which is missed out in closely contested election.
I think with this, we'll come to the close for the session. Thank you once again, Mr. Pradeep Gupta, for patiently answering all the questions. And I wish you all the very best for your book, How India Votes and What It Means. It would be good if any of maybe your team members can actually post the link for people to maybe buy it from the Amazon. I hope it's available on the Amazon platform.
Yes,
right?
it is. It is available. So it is very much available in Amazon. And I think, yeah, if you're suggesting, we can post it once again. Because it was posted when it was released during April, but we should post it again, now. Okay. We are actually very weak in terms of advertising ourselves.
Right.
It's a good suggestion, and thank you very much. Thank you very much, and a pleasure, talking to you guys and answering your questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank you.